Hello, everyone. I always wait for that little thing up in the top that says, this hangout on air is live. And then a little yellow button comes up and says live. So good. So we're live and we're happy to be here. We haven't been here for a week. And it's good to get together. We're so happy to be together. So hello, everyone. Welcome to SkyWire. My name is Marilyn Shannon, and my lower third won't work, but I do. So here I am. And, and the idea of this show is to talk about listening and how it affects our everyday life, every moment, every second of our life. We are turned on to the practice of listening. And with me today, I want to welcome Margarita. Hello.
Welcome. And my cat is here too, if you can see him.
Ooh, what's your cat's name? What's your cat's name?
A kitten. And he brought in a chipmunk, and I photographed the chipmunk just 10 minutes ago in the kitchen window, if you could see it, in the flower pot.
Wow.
So that's the actual live broadcast from Kingston, Ontario, where we have 4. It feels like -4, but it's +4 Celsius. So, ooh.
My God, and I'm at 80 degrees, and I'm like, ooh. And so now we have Katrina. How are you? Doing good?
Well, I'm doing well, but I'm cold too. Colorado has had no sun, and it's been really chilly, so it's very uncharacteristic of this time of year. But you know, I'm gonna relish it for as long as I can, because I'm sure it'll be hot soon enough.
And what's the temperature there?
I think it's just about 40.
Oh my goodness gracious! Wow! I can't get over it.
Temperatures.
Yeah.
Me either.
Oh man! Wow. Gail, what about you? You're up in Boston too. It's cold there.
Yeah, well, this morning when I walked the dog, it was about 43. I think it's probably gotten warmer now. Now it's probably, I don't know, but probably high 50s, I would say, but I'm cold.
Wow, I cannot get over it. And Adelaide.
A lot of sweaters on the panel.
Oh,
I'm going to put my shawl on.
It's so interesting to me because I'm thinking everybody's warm, almost. Like it's getting to that time of year. And then we have Mark and Heidi. How are you?
Hello, we're in sunny Italy, and it's about 75 this afternoon, and that would be about 22, 23 Celsius.
So we have one in regard to temperature.
Yeah.
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 That'd be ideal.
It's
Yeah,
like living
yeah.
in San Diego,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. And here, I think, let me see, I was going to look quickly, and I think here, well, now it's 66 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going up to 75.
All right.
Cool.
So
All right.
you reach us. You'll be where we are.
Yeah, but I ain't in Italy.
Ah.
So, Marilyn,
Yes.
I gave you a hint that relates to our topic today. I said, come over to Italy.
Come over to Italy?
Yeah.
So I didn't get it. but I'll work on it.
Okay.
Yeah, so hints. So I was explaining, before the show started, we were kind of talking amongst ourselves about hints and how interesting they are. I mean, people give hints all the time. We give hints, we take hints, we're looking for hints. What is a hint?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it? Really, what is it? Is it a game we play? Mm-hmm. What is a hint? Mark, what's a hint?
Oh, I had to chuckle because a hint is we're testing the waters. We're going to see if anybody will notice or will maybe understand what we really wanted to imply, what we maybe didn't want to say directly because it might be a little brusque or offend somebody. So it's guess what I'm thinking, but I'm not responsible for it if you guess wrong.
Okay. So you're saying it's a game?
I'm sure it is in my case. I'm a little devious, of course. Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's keep going and see what we build here. What about you, Heidi? What do you think?
For me, hints can be two things. First of all, it can be a good way sometimes of communicating without, offending, without creating a drama. And the other thing, which is not so good way, it can be a means of manipulation and of creating difficult situations. Because if I have given you a hint and you didn't get it, then it's your fault, and not mine. So, and it leaves open so many interpretations and misunderstandings. So, it depends how we use it.
Right. And we're going to get into that, plus what listening does for hints. So, Gail, what do you think?
I would say that a hint is a subtle communication of some kind.
And a subtle communication coming from where?
Right.
To accomplish what?
Well, it depends. I mean, it could be a hint from the universe. It could be a hint from your spouse. It could be, anything. But I just think it's some kind of communication that isn't outright. It's not very clear. Like maybe, you could miss it if you're not listening, or miss it if you're not paying attention. It's not an obvious communication, but it is a communication.
Okay, that's really good. This is really good. And what about you, Katrina?
I really like the description so far, because the thing I loved is they all kind of use the same words that I would use to describe a hint. So to just add a little bit more flavor to that, like, to me, hints can be playful because they aren't so direct. So it's sort of like, how are you approaching a situation? Are you kind of getting a full-on clear in communication that you know what you need to do, or is there just like a hint? Like, does it allow you to find a new little path or a crumb to follow? So to me, I can kind of look at them as playful things as well as insightful things.
Okay, good. Marguerite?
Well, I think hints can be used in a self-preservation mode, where, like, if you think that there is a lot of arguments and stuff, you don't want to start an argument in, let's say, in a relationship, so you give a little hint about what's going on. And if they can pick up on the other side, then we don't have to go into that argument again. So that's kind of a self-preservation method as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. And as Heidi said, you can use it to manipulate, oh, it's your fault, you never pay attention to me, or something like that. And also, I agree with Katrina, it's like, could be playful, and you hint, you say something, and then it becomes funny, and it lightens up the conversation. So there, I think that a hint can be used in a numerous number of ways.
I think that's very important to understand, because we can't. All hints are not the same, then, right?
Yes.
Because sometimes we intentionally are beating around the bush because we don't know how to communicate it. Sometimes it's actions that are communicating something that we want to communicate, not because we haven't, and maybe we have said something, but somebody's just not getting it. They haven't gotten the underlying conversation. They haven't gotten the hint. They haven't understood the message. And so maybe there's like a tip of the iceberg that is a hint of something. Even a smell. A smell is a hint of something, right? So it can be so many different things. So I think sometimes we've looked at it as being negative, when actually it can be something also positive, right? So, go ahead. Who had something to say?
I was just saying, what do you mean negative? I guess I never thought of it as negative in any context.
Well, when people are not communicating clearly, and they're beating around the bush, and they're not being direct, and they're just like, hinting at something without actually saying it.
Okay, that's interesting, because when I think of the word hint, I think of it as being intentional, but maybe it's not always intentional.
So what's an intentional hint?
To me, the word is intentional. To me,
okay.
If it's not intentional, then it's not deliberate. You know, it's more just unclear. You know, it's not being clear. But a hint, I always think of it as, you know, like a playful thing, like what Trina said. I love that. But a hint is usually when somebody's hinting at something, they're purposeful about it. You know, maybe not. That's just how I look at it.
Oh, so that's very interesting. So this is why listening becomes so important when we are listening, which is the awareness, it's everything, to whatever the conversation is about and the hint. Because it can be intentional. It can be where we are communicating directly. Right? Is that what you're saying, Gail? That we can be communicating directly?
Yeah, I think that being able to communicating directly doesn't negate being subtle.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay, so who else has a good point that would like to be making right now? Who has a question?
Well, I would like to ask about, can we refine the art of making hints so that we can communicate better, especially in relationship, right? Because I have experienced giving hints to my ex-husband, and they just go over the head. They don't listen to it. And then, because I don't want to be confrontational, right? And so then I tried a little more obvious hint, and then a more obvious hint, and then they didn't get it either. And then, you know, that builds up, and instead I should have said it, this is what it is. And maybe that would have solved the problem if you actually said it clearly. But in the past, I've been very afraid of confrontation, right? So you do using hints in a sort of a labyrinthine way, and that is not helpful. Sometimes one has to be sort of authentic and say, I have no intention of doing this, etc. Over to you, Heidi.
Yeah, I haven't upped the comment tracker, but I would like to read the comment, or somebody else can bring that up, the comment of Lawrence. He has two comments.
Good. I was just going to do that on my cell phone because it won't work on the thing, so I'm so glad you got the hint.
Okay. That was an unspoken hint. That was intuition. He says, first, I think that if we give a hint on a touchy subject and it's gotten, a blow-up is just as likely as with being outspoken. Hints are fear-based, he says. And then there's another one later. They are also helpful hints intended to prompt a person's self-teaching process. I fully agree with that. Mm-hmm. I don't know you.
Yeah. What? Say that last one again. Is a what?
There are also helpful hints intended to prompt a person's self-teaching process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do agree that it's to me, I think it's based. There's a fear there. There's a fear if you don't get the hint, and there's a fear in somebody hinting around. However, Gail brought up a very interesting point about hints as well. So I want to try to examine that. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
He's going on with the conversation. He says, I agree with Margarita's comment about being explicit. A person has to want to get the hint, in which case maybe hinting isn't necessary.
So even when you're direct, though, and you could be saying anything you want, if somebody's not listening, they're not getting the hint. Even though you might be saying it directly, they're not getting them. A hint is a message. So there's no guarantee they're going to get it even when you're direct.
Yes, and when you see that they don't get it, that is a hint for you that you have to change your way of trying to communicate.
Yes. And that is a positive when you can get that message, right? So a hint's a message. So I want to thank, and then I see that Dave Moore is also made a comment that he's having some technical issues and couldn't join us, but he said he didn't want to burst in, and I'm saying burst in anytime you want. It's fine. Bursting is fine. Okay, so interesting.
This was a hint.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's a message, right? So what kind of message is a hint? Go ahead, Katrina.
Well, because I was going to say something totally different.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I wasn't really going to answer that question. But I do think that it relates to what I was going to say, and I do think that men and women hint differently. I think that women have been sort of in that position of, they don't necessarily always feel comfortable being direct, so they hint a little more. Or there's just that seductive aspect of the female where you're sort of using hints in a more alluring way. But I also think that when you're looking at it on the flip side, a hint is really based, I think, on your personality and what your communication style is. So for me, as a writer, I've just sort of learned to be more direct, but that doesn't necessarily mean that sometimes when I'm talking about more emotional things, that it's easy for me to be direct. So I think it depends on the topic. It depends on your personality. I think all of those factors come into play, and I do think the male-female aspect does have an impact on that as well.
That's interesting, too. That would make perfect sense. And also, I think it's a learning experience. That you can pick up on a hint, even if it's a message from the universe. That it's learning. It's about learning to tune in deeply. Yeah, go ahead, Heidi.
It seems to me that at the moment we are talking about hints which are spoken words. I think there are so many different forms of hints.
Right.
It's not only spoken words. It's when you do something like this, or even the body language. When you go away, somebody speaks, he speaks to me, and I'm going, There are so many hints, possibility to communicate, which are much more than only words. So just to...
Yes. Yeah.
You think when teenagers roll their eyes at you?
Say that again. When teenagers what?
Like when teenagers totally roll their eyes at you because they have no words for what they're saying, that you just know they're annoyed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very exaggerated.
Yeah.
Not only teenagers, by the way.
Right. So hints are a lot. Hints are what we call a lot of things a hint, if we get it. Maybe. And so maybe it's not just based on fear. Maybe there's hints are just they're kind of like sometimes just scratching the surface of something. Maybe it's a piece of a puzzle is a hint. It's like a smell or like you walk in and there's a hint of rosemary in the air. Right? There's a hint of something. There's a hint of some something that you can see out. You're walking and there's a hint of something floating. It's not always what Heidi said. It's not always something that we intentionally leave out, but it's something that's just already there.
I'll jump in, Marilyn.
Go ahead, yeah.
So my son...
Wait a minute. There's a comment. Can I bring the comment until we go to...
Wait, hold on. It's what?
Okay, it's responding to Katharina. This is Fenster Farm Greenhouse is saying, men always never get the hint from their wives. My wife can attest to that.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that in a minute, but go ahead, Gail. That's a very good point because we want to see how do we listen for these hints? How do we allow ourselves or help ourselves to become more aware, to tune in, to be that tuned in, to be able to figure out hints. But go ahead, Gail. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that my son loves this drink. It's called Hint, and it's just this water with just a hint of some kind of flavor in it. And I mean, sometimes less is more. I don't think that a hint is necessarily fear-based at all. I think it can be, but just as a writer, when you're telling a story, if you're building up something and you want to do some foreshadowing, that's a technique that you use. You make hints all the time because sometimes it depends on the purpose and what you want to do. Sometimes a hint is more powerful. It's a particular type of communication, and I think it depends on the person using it and what the purpose of communicating it in that way is. It's not inherently good or bad, but I like hints. I mean, as a writer, I think that hints are very powerful, and that's why people use them.
That's a very good point, because you can keep somebody's attention through spicing things up a little bit, little by little. So that's a very good point. So hints, I mean, like anything else, we can use them for all kinds of things, and how we intend to use them, or how we see them if we miss them. Where we come from is also plays a big role in this. So I love all the ways that we are discussing hints. I think it's really interesting. So, Katrina, did you have something else to add?
But not at the moment. I just think that, to me, I'm right in alignment with Gail in terms of, as a writer, there is a hint and playfulness to it. That's why my favorite word for hint is playful, because whether you're trying to be direct or not, there is an intention, and sometimes that playfulness isn't necessarily a positive thing, but maybe that's the best way that you can communicate with the skills that you have. So I think it's always, the intention's always with the person that's sharing it, but there is something else going on under the surface that requires both of you to listen. Maybe the way you're hinting isn't something that someone would actually be able to land with them. They're not paying attention in that way. And so, like Heidi was saying before, you have to kind of wiggle around a little bit and say, okay, well, I'm clearly making hints here that aren't landing what's going on. So I think it's just a way to test the waters sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is something subtle, like you said earlier. It is something small. It is something that has, maybe isn't as noticeable as other things are, but it does take listening. Why does it take listening? What is so important about listening and hinting?
Can we, before we go into that, there's a good conversation here. The gender topic has aroused a little bit. And by a chance, I seem to be all men. Lawrence says, it's those subtle, non-verbal hints from women that drive men nuts. It borders on a demand for telepathy.
Yes, it does.
Then Dave Moore says, a hint is really a intention, subtle but still a direction, a command. And Michael Thomas, hints sometimes breed manipulative perceptions. Straight talk or communication is more just and personal. But I'm German and I'm very straight often, and I push people away. And he had to get used to it. He couldn't handle my straight talk.
You know what I find interesting? That there's a lot, and I appreciate this very much, because this is really like hinting at something. So there's a lot of men on the comment stream commenting about this. So it appears that men would like to know more about hints, right? It appears that way. There's a lot of men commenting, and I really love the direction, and it's just apparent that there's something going on there with that gender thing and hints. What do you all think? Who has a comment about that? Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, yeah. I may be running against the grain here, because I'm more likely to give hints to Heidi than she to me, I think. And one thing that happens then is if she doesn't get them because she's German, I get more and more frustrated and angry at her, because it forces me to have to be direct and open, which is what I was trying to avoid. Yeah.
Okay, so my question is then, if you are a direct, analytical type of person, and that's your energy, then you're going to be less direct, and you're going to listen less for or understand the hints less than if you are coming from some other place. If you're direct, hints are hard to take. But if you are more, like, as Katrina said, more playful, which is not an analytical place to be, more playful, more maybe some emotional, then you're going to hint more.
Depends what hint it is.
Okay, all right. What do you mean?
What area it is about. As Lawrence said, when that is a difficult area, and between men and women often is. So hints are they can be playful as they
Yes.
begin to
We
be
can be.
with us,
Yeah.
but often they are trying to avoid clarity. So, you know,
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, putting themselves on the, somebody might be a little cautious about putting themselves on the line or not even knowing that they're even hinting. They're just being playful, right? As Katrina said. So what do people do? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think a lot of times hints come when people feel uncomfortable asking for something directly, too. Like if they need help with something, or if they may need some support with something and they aren't quite sure how to ask for that, then it can kind of come across as more of a hint than an actual request for help. So that can be a little confusing, I
Okay.
think, at times, too.
So if you're getting a confusing feeling, for all the men that are listening who are concerned, who say that they're not getting the hints from their wives, which is could be very true, because men are more pragmatic in some ways. They've been forced to be this way. A lot of men have been forced to be like, analytical and, taking, what you say is what it is, as opposed to this underlying message that's going on. But do
they ask how? Do they ask their spouses to communicate with them differently either? That's really what I would wonder. If you've been with someone for a long time, you could say, hey, I understand that we kind of have friction in this area a lot. I'm not sure if I'm hearing you as well as I could be. I don't know how to listen in this way. I mean, that's why they have those books about the listening languages. I'm sure you've heard those. Like, some people share love by spending money. So to them, that means that you're showing them affection, and but if you're giving that to someone that doesn't necessarily honor money as a way to honor their value, then they aren't going to respond to that because it doesn't suit what their particular values are. So I do think underlying all of this is some of that value messaging. Like, what are some of those values that are kind of circulating under the surface for the hints to land?
So so before you even understand what the hint is, how do you start to prepare yourself? Because listen, a lot of us are not communicating clearly anyway, right? There's a lot of times within our communication that we're not communicating right on the nose. So everything we're communicating becomes a hint, unless we're downright direct and we know exactly what we want. And who knows? Everything has an underlying message of being a hint. So how do you begin the process? What is the first thing that you connect with in the communication to be able to understand anything that's underlying? Call it a hint, call it a message, call it a symbol, call it whatever. What do you do? What is that thing? Go ahead, Mark.
Moment.
okay.
All right. In my case, I think I have to watch myself and how I feel about how my hints are being received. If the hint is not being received, it's not necessarily Heidi's fault, as much as I would like it to be. And I have to look at myself and say, what am I being hesitant about? What am I not really wanting to come out and say directly? And what's that all about? And it forces me to become less manipulative, more direct, more honest. And fortunately, I don't usually get in terrible trouble when I do that. But I can still fear being in trouble, so to speak.
Okay. All right. So that's perfect. You're going to listen for what you're leaving out. Right? That's listening. That's deep listening. Listening for what you're leaving out. Listening for how you feel. Right? Listening for what you notice. How does the other person look? I mean, if you're telling a joke and the other person doesn't get the joke.
Normally it's like that.
That's
Normally
often
it's like
cultural.
that. Okay. Well, okay. There's a message there. Now, and the same thing with when you are on the receiving end, right? And you're noticing something about the way you feel. Ooh, you burst in. Good. We have a burster.
That wasn't subtle.
No, he got but you see, he got the hint. He got the hint. Okay, you got the hint that what? What was the hint that you got?
Get in there.
Okay, that you were wanted. Like I could have
Exactly.
said bust in, right? And you might have thought, oh, she's not serious about that,
No,
right? So
no,
what?
I don't.
Right. I didn't have a lot of time to
Well,
go into more. Go ahead.
yeah, no, it's just it was direct, you know, just like a command, a hint tension, as we said. You know, it's do it. You know, I'm sorry if I jumped in on somebody else's conversation here. Was somebody speaking when I came in?
Well, we were talking about people receiving
No.
hints and giving hints and how
Yeah.
we become aware of of what's happening in that conversation, in the communication that involves a
Mm,
hint. And every part of our conversations, we're hinting at something because we're digging for the way to communicate.
mm.
We're digging for the
Oh
way
yeah.
to express ourselves. So everything is a hint, really, when you think about it.
Unfortunately, a lot of things get lost in translation from a hint. We can be mildly hinting at something, um, and somebody can read it in a completely different way. And I put a post into the comments about a copywriter who really drilled into me when I was in the corporate world, and the company was very into advertising in a non-direct way. And it was a suggestion that you should have cable TV or satellite TV. It was a suggestion that you would benefit from having a lot of channels on your TV and a lot of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And the copywriter said something that I carried into my work, and that is, people do not have time for your pathetic subtlety. And it was absolutely right. If it's a hint and somebody's got to try to figure out what you mean, they have a choice of what direction they could go in. They could go in a completely different direction. And it relates to the answer that you get is only as good as the question you gave. It's the caliber of your question, really, that will give you a high caliber answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think hinting is fine, but if you want to quickly move somewhere, then you have to look at an intentional, direct structure of conversation, be it a command, be it an order, be it an intent.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is no grey area there. There can be grey area with hinting.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. So now let's go on to Marguerite. You've been quiet for a minute.
Yeah, I'm watching my cat and my chipmunk and going in and out of the door. As you saw in the beginning, I had this little chipmunk here who was in the kitchen, and so I've been sort of a little bit distracted. And I think that that's a hint from my cat to tell me that shut this thing off and come help me catch that chipmunk. So that's why I went out and threw the cat out and closed the door. So I responded to that. And I think that the conversation is really good because when you're talking about hints, it's a tool that can be used in a number of ways. And I agree with someone who says that if you don't want to say enough or say the whole thing and be sort of court-martialed for it, you hint at it instead and then expect that they're going to understand it without them having to explain it. So that's what I came up with now.
Mm-hmm. So this is a very interesting conversation, I think. And again, listening is the bridge to even discussing this openly and just dissecting it, because I don't know what it all means. You know, I don't know how it all happens. I just know that the more you listen, the more you uncover a message that we're and I used this yesterday with somebody, we're blackboards for each other. Whether we want to acknowledge that or not, we're all learning on each other. And we get to erase the messages, and then we get to write again and start again. And we're learning all of this to better our communication, to help our lives be more and more full. So hinting is something that, what is our intention? Is our intention fear, or is our intention playful? Are we flirting? You know, are we hinting at trying to get a new job with our boss? You know, maybe we're being careful. Maybe we don't want to come right out and say something right away. We want to see what somebody else's, position is. So maybe we sit back a little and we just throw out a little bit of a line, like a fishing line, and we see what we want to catch. Go ahead, Heidi.
I have some more comments. This is Jeremy who says, hints are very easily misinterpreted due to the subtlety involved. Sometimes gets lost in the translation from the hinter to the listener. Part of the problem is just not knowing what exactly is the speaker hinting at within the hint. Maybe I should start asking, is it a hint? Very interesting. Hashtag.
Oh my God, that was perfect. That's great. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, asking. So it's listening for what's being left out, or what you're confused about, or what you haven't heard. Listen for what you haven't heard. Listen for a misalignment. You're listening for all those things, and with an open heart. Katrina, go ahead.
And I would also say that the hints that you notice or can listen to actually change as you do. So things that you may not have noticed 5 years ago, as you kind of grow and shape yourself and sort of learn a little bit, get into some scrapes and figure out like, hey, I don't really like that, or I'm not in tune with that anymore. I think you can pick up on the more subtle hints of things. It's just that when you aren't really tuned into you first, it's hard to pick up on that stuff, and your mind gets in the way a lot. So the more open you can be on your own self-development path, that helps you kind of just free up that space to pick up a lot more of those subtle hints. The hand gestures, the eyes, the words, like, and how all of those things combine together to really actually pick up the more meaningful hints.
And that's a good point. And when you know somebody, so like Dave knew that I said come in, because he knows that based on what I've said before, if anybody has to leave, you leave. If you want to come, you come in. I'm pretty direct with that, right? There's no worries here. This is just an open forum for us to learn and communicate together, so it's all good. So he knows.
Melanie, can I just?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, can I just say that I've been married twice, and I know not to argue with a woman.
So when she says "bust in," you busting in, right? But when you know somebody, and you're able to put 2 and 2, and you get 4. If you don't know somebody as well, then maybe the signs or the hinting is a little bit, confusing. So again, you ask. Go ahead, Mark.
I'm holding up my fingers for Heidi.
For the comment, Judy, I have. There's Lawrence and says, another way of framing it. A hint is the deliberate way of communicating without communicating too much.
Yes, is that his definition, or did he look that up?
No, I think it's his.
That was a great,
there is some more. This is a person we haven't welcomed yet, A.R. Grover, and says sometimes there is more to going slow than going fast. When hinting, it is more about attempting to getting others to use their brain's opinion. I do not think it's pathetic, yet just another way of communicating.
Yes. And I think...
And then there's...
And let me just say one thing. I think that was a very good point, because even as a coach, and a lot of us do a lot of work with people, I may have what I think is an answer or an idea, but I'm not going to say it, because I want my client to come up with it on their own. So I may hint at something to see if it has a truth to them, if it connects with their knowingness, and so that they can find it on their own, if that's it. Because I'm not attached to their yuck, right? They're attached to their yuck. So I may not be, I could see something differently than they can. So I may hint at something so that somebody else might learn something. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Marilyn, this is for sure as the coach in a professional way, but we were talking very much in the normal communication. And there's another one which Lawrence says, He says, here's another one. A hint is a way of asking for something without being accountable for the request.
Exactly.
An escape hatch. And
Yeah.
I think this is so very often.
Okay, say that one more time.
A hint is a way of asking for something without being accountable for the request. An escape hatch.
So without owning it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we do. I mean, so yeah, this is all really great. Gail.
Interpretation.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Gail, you're listening.
Yeah, I think it really all, it's not black and white. I really think it all depends on the person who's doing the hinting and what their intention is. You know, it could be coming from fear, it could be coming from complete power and playfulness, and you know, that might be the need of that situation, is to be more hintful, like in your example you just gave about coaching. And I just also want to say that this conversation for me, I think the thing that I realize the most, or that I learn the most, is just about, Marilyn, you said it, like the whole world and communication, it's all full of hints. I mean, everything is a hint except for those direct conversations, but then they could be hinting to something else as well. Like if you think of all nonverbal communication, that could be thought of as a hint. And it just goes to show for me how important the listening is. You know, it all comes back to the listening and being able to pick up on those hints, especially like with intuition, you know, like hints coming at us from the universe. Like most of the time it does come in as a hint. You know, a lot of times those that they call it the still small voice. They don't call it that for nothing. I mean, sometimes an intuition will come in and it'll bop you over the head, but more often than not, it's like a hint, or it's like a playful thing. I think that that's how the universe really communicates with us a lot, and so it's important to listen.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I love what Gail's saying right now, because it gives you the opportunity to ask more questions. Like a hint to me is an invitation to ask a question. So if it's a hint from the universe, you can say, okay, well, now it's an opportunity for me to dig a little deeper and ask myself some questions. Like, how am I feeling about this? How am I tuning into this? And then you use the same interaction maybe with a person. Maybe they don't use your sense, they don't feel completely comfortable with asking you directly, so maybe asking some questions can help. So I think that the hints playing with questions is a good mix to kind of get to the bigger picture.
So these are all really good points, because everything is here for our learning, right? Mm-hmm. For connection, for our learning. So hints are actually like you just said, a perfect way for people to learn to connect. It's a bridge. It's a way of bridging each other and of getting closer, understanding.
It's like an invitation, you know, and it also shows that we're in this all together, you know. It's like a partnership here, whether you have a partnership with a person or even just a partnership with life itself. It takes two, you know, and if somebody's hinting at something and you feel like you need a more direct communication about it, like say with a spouse or something like that, then speak up, you know, and say, hey, I'm hearing you and I need you to be more direct with me, or whatever it is. But it takes two. And hints invite that, you know, hints show us like we're not alone here, you know, or at least we don't have to be.
So for all the men and women out here, where we know that our ways of communicating is different. So this is an opportunity, so I hope everybody's listening. This is an opportunity not to look at it as wrong, not to make somebody wrong, not to look at it as fear. Look at it as a way to understand, a path to understanding. And no matter what the communication is about, when you don't know, don't take it personally that you don't know and you miss something. You ask. And it's a way to get closer. It's a way to, if somebody is hinting at something and they are uncomfortable, so I'm uncomfortable about it. Help me out here. Right? Help me out. Help me figure out how to communicate. Help me be more comfortable with what I have to say. Marguerite?
Well, I think that the best thing we can do is to tune in with ourselves and be authentic. And actually, if we don't get the hint, if we don't hear another person's perception, and we feel something in the air that's expected of us, for example, now when you cued me to come in here, so I lost my thought there for a moment, but then I decided I'm listening inside, and then, okay, so this is all cool. I can handle this. And if that was a hint, then I responded to it. You see? Like, I think we can use hints in that way, and it's good. It's good because then, okay, so you have a response from somebody who otherwise wouldn't have responded.
Right. That's great. Thank you for that. Dave?
Yeah, I think a lot of the time hints are a form of persuasion, that we can persuade somebody indirectly to do something, and they then have the accountability for taking that on board. It's as if we said, you've got to do this. It's very direct, but if we told them that someone somewhere had done something like this and they were very successful with it, wasn't that a great idea? And then they go off and they think, yeah, why don't I do that? You've got them to do exactly the same thing, but in an indirect way. And by merely hinting at it, they get accountability for it as if it's their idea. And it's a little bit like when somebody buys a piano and they want to learn the piano, you as a pianist could say, I'll teach you, which is very direct. But if they said, are you going to have lessons? And the person says, yes, I'm thinking of having lessons. I've got to have some form of lesson. They said, yeah, I remember when I started 25 years ago to learn the piano, and it was at the start of a long journey. I've been playing it for a long while, and then left. That person will then think, maybe they could teach me how to play the piano, rather than pushing yourself forward. So it becomes somebody else's idea, and they get ownership of it. I think that's where hinting can be empowering for a lot of people, rather than you telling them this is what I think you should do. This is what I think is the best course of action. As a coach, if you're telling somebody what they should do and you think it's the best option for them, and if they don't understand that, then man, you really got to do this. It tends to be you telling somebody what they should do, when in fact a coach is getting somebody to make decisions themselves. I think hinting comes into it a lot with coaching.
I got to do it with my grown children too. I mean, you don't say to a 33-year-old daughter, you need to. I mean, well, I do, but not all the time. I mean, I might hint around a little. I mean, I'm not going to come out and just be full floss in her face. I'm going to be subtle about it. So hinting is a subtlety. It's like a hint of color in a room. It's subtle. It's just a little. Yeah. It's like, and what about in marketing when people do these sprinkle things where they send out like a little, like I'm going to be doing this. It's a little hint, and then the next day it's something else, or a grand opening of a business coming soon. That's a hint.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like I said about marketing. You can either go one way or the other. You can either be very grey, very vague, and let people formulate it in their own minds. The risk is that they may not put it together correctly. It's like Laurel and Hardy. When they're trying to make something, they've got a map of the Boulder Dam. It doesn't fit. It's not the same thing, and you're relying on them to be able to do that. But if you are very clear about your marketing, and you don't have time for their subtlety, you just tell them. Then you've got no grey area. There isn't really any middle ground. You either go hint at it or you tell them clearly.
Right. So your intention is, like, I think it was Marguerite who said something earlier about knowing yourself. Your intention and how you use anything is important. Your intention for hinting is important. Your intention, right? Gail's shaking her head.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if my intention is not to hurt somebody, So I'm going to just, try to get my point across with my daughters or a client, whatever. I'm hinting, My intention is good. Otherwise, I would be in somebody's face. I don't want to. In Gail's take earlier about writing and hinting throughout the book, like building to a climax is a hint in a book, right? Being playful is lovely, right? But if your intention is to manipulate, or you don't like somebody and you can't tell them you don't want to go out with them again, and you hint or you don't answer the phone, there's a little difference there. So what we want to talk about is, and what we've been talking about is, how do we take these hints and use them for good? Katrina, did you have your hand up? This is like an auction. If you put your hand up, I'm coming to you. It's your sale if you've got your hand up.
Well, I liked how you said, how can we use hints in a positive way? Because I don't really necessarily know if people are maliciously intending. I mean, yes, there are some people that are doing that, but, for this guy that you were saying as an example that just was a little bit having a challenge with the dating part of things, and he doesn't really know how to pick up on hints or maybe give hints. Maybe the person he's interacting with is turned off by that, but he doesn't realize that the hints he's giving don't work, right? Or vice versa. So I think that there's a self-understanding that needs to come into play here, and you have to look at the mirrors around you, which is the other people. It's like if you're dropping some hints and you notice they aren't landing, you're like, okay, well, what was the context of the situation? How can I listen to some of the other subtleties so that I can see where these hints are landing? But more importantly, it's like, why are you hinting in the first place? So is it a playful thing, the intention part? But is there a bigger communication issue for you where you just feel that you aren't comfortable with saying something directly? Mm-hmm. I think those are all different pieces to look at too. So there's a lot of dimensions in the listening.
Absolutely. And it's learning who the person is, so that you can put the puzzle together and go, they're being playful, or this is their MO. So we're going to be out of time in just a few moments. And is there any comments? Yes, Heidi.
Yeah, there are comments, but I wanted to talk by myself because I wanted to go to the part of who receives the hint. And going back in the gender dynamics, often we receive the hint, but we get angry or, blameful and so on. And I think this is the chance of who receives the hint to find a way to talk clearly and ask the questions which we said before, and to open the discussion into clarity, instead of getting more angry and more angry, trying to not listen to the hint or something like this, Yes. I think there is also a big chance in it.
Yes. So to
there
listen,
are quite a lot of comments.
Okay. So listen for the anger. Okay, listen for the anger. Listen for noticing that anger, because it's an opportunity for each of us not to go hint to hint, but to not banter to banter necessarily, but to listen for the anger so that there's something good that can come out of that encounter. So go ahead, Heidi. You have one you want to read?
There are many little ones. I think we can leave it here. They are interacting between each other, and it's very nice.
Okay, so let me.
This is great.
What are you seeing? If you take a quick glance over those interactions, what is the message you're getting from those interactions? Can you sum it up? Can you give us an overall impression of what you're hearing?
I see playfulness.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, an understanding. It's not really, it's like this, but they are playing with interactions. Also, Katrina, it was about the universe, and when the universe gives us a hint, and she says, "What did you say? That is even more and more coming," and it's quite. I love it. Mm-hmm. I cannot give the call. Oh, yeah.
Good.
And LOL is a hint sometimes too.
Yeah.
What's a hint? What's a hint?
Giggling.
They've written LOL.
Oh yeah.
That's a hint.
But I think laughter's a big hint, though. I mean, if you're, sometimes you laugh when you're nervous, but, sometimes other people laugh when you're doing an exchange to kind of make things a little bit more relaxed in the room. That's why you tell a joke. There's a lot of different ways to kind of ease that tension, and I think a laugh can be a hint.
Sure.
Sure. A way we dress. How about the way we dress? You know, some
And
very.
Lawrence says, to get the hint, you gotta wanna.
Yeah, I did like that.
You gotta what? I missed that part. To get the hint, what? You gotta what?
You got to want it. No, if I had to.
You gotta wanna.
Yes, that's really a good point. You gotta wanna play. You gotta wanna make it right. You know, you gotta make it understand it. That was great. Dave, did you have something?
Oh, no, not really. I mean, I think we've covered everything. It would be nice to discuss. I think at some point the male-female, the gender difference in listening as well.
Okay.
I think because that seems to be a natural follow-on from this. There are some people are commenting, doing some great comments on there.
So
about the difference in gender.
Okay. So when we do it, all of you out there that are listening and partaking and enjoying this, you must come and add your perspectives. That's going to be very important. So we'll do that, and maybe we'll do that next. So in final words and closing, let me start with Marguerite. Final words, closing. What would you like to share?
Well, I think this was an amazing episode, and the hinting, I got new perspectives of what hinting is, because in my life, I know about hinting, and I've done it lots of times, and I've probably done all of these things that was mentioned here today, in all shades of gray to red hot. But so this was a sort of a feedback on my life here. So thank you very much for all the inputs. I learned a lot.
Good. Katrina?
Well, I have a playful personality and I like to laugh. So for me, the hinting is more like teasing sometimes too. So I think for me, I prefer to be more direct, but I like, to me, the hints are playful and I like to play in that realm with them.
That's perfect. Gail?
I just really appreciate this conversation a lot. I never thought about hints before. You know, like I don't know if when I was a kid, sometimes I would say a word and I would repeat it again and again and again and again, and then all of a sudden the word would sound like, what a weird sounding word, like hint, 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 hint. And I just really thought of, I really love hints. I think they're great when the intention is right, and even if it's coming from fear, what an opportunity for the person who's receiving the hint to, reach out and grab their hand and say, like, hey, can I help in some way? I love hints.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that originally because it really set a different bar for hints. So I would say with hints, you want to listen to how you're feeling, as Mark had said earlier. You want to listen for your intention. You want to listen to who you know, who you're hinting with, or who's hinting with you. You want to listen to what the history is. How has this person communicated with you before? Is there some kind of pattern that you're missing or that you got? You want to listen for time, because time is relevant. Because if you don't have time, you can't hint. And you don't like hinting maybe when you don't have time. You want to say, okay, just tell me what you want. If you got some time to be playful, and it's a big thing, then hinting is appropriate because it's a way for us to kind of like sculpt things. Sometimes we don't know where we're going. It's a hint. We're getting a hint from the universe, and we're sharing a hint. So one hint builds on another hint. Dave, did you want to add something?
No, and I think also that we get a lot of hints indirectly from all over, not just from people.
Yeah,
but we
everywhere.
get hints in our lives all the time, and it's down to us to notice them.
That's right.
And to take them, pick them up, and run with them. And until we do that, we never really know what they are and how they can help us. And so we need to be aware all the time of what we're being told, what we see, what we hear, anything that comes within our circle of influence, I think.
Right.
it's something that's like prevalent so much, and we overlook it. We are giving clues, and we are given clues. It's not like we get information. We are getting information. It's not like we get help. We are getting help all the time, and it's down to us to decipher it, translate it, and read it, and understand it, and use it.
Perfect. Yep. And Heidi and Mark?
Okay. I'm wondering what's the big hint of this show today, Because there's a meta message behind all of this talk about subtlety and about the individual understandings that we have, the individual styles that we have, and how all of this plays together in a great complex web that is reaching in some direction to communicate with one another, And we try all kinds of ways to do that. And this show has been a wonderful example of how complex this can be. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and I would still like to bring the comment from Michael Thomas, and he says, our societies hint differently. Awareness is everything, and I think it is really important because so many misunderstandings come between group understanding and the other group doesn't understand it, the hints. So it is good to be reminded of that.
And it comes down to hints equal listening. Period.
Yeah, and knowing also the context, because only listening without the context, you cannot understand the hints.
Well,
I mean, the cultural context,
And that's what listening does. Listening gives you the context. Listening, you listen for the context. You listen for the pieces. You listen for the difference in society. You listen to the awareness. That's why this is so important. That's why this is such a great show. Because we've been listening to this magic of hints, and you got to listen to figure it out. So with that, go ahead.
Personal takeaway, My personal takeaway, I think I rarely have been so allegro. So it was
playful.
So playful. This is the right word. The playful in a show as today. It was really great. I liked the atmosphere.
It was.
Perfect.
And also with the people here in the comment stream, it was really a good collaboration and fun. It was fun. Really good.
And why don't you laugh at my jokes?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't understand them.
So that's what it takes, a collaboration of people in the show and people who are listening. You're so much a part of everything. We need you so much. And going forward and continuing all of the work that all hangouts are about. And so this topic of hint has been really interesting, and I really appreciated it. And it's been permission. That's what it's been permission. It's been, wow, and I want to listen to more for those hints because that's going to bring me closer to you. So with that, we're coming to an end. We'll be here again next week, and I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful week, and thank you so much for being here and sharing your time with us, and we will see you next week. If you have any questions or you want to, ask about a topic, that's great. We'd love to hear from you. Just communicate with me or either any of us, and we can put it forward. Thanks so much for everybody here and everybody in the room and everybody out there. We'll see you next week. Bye.